His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq issues 2 royal decrees. Ghazir gas field begins production around 4 months ahead of schedule. The state's general financial revenues declined by 12.4%, and the public spending also declines by 8.4%. And financing agreements are signed to establish a hospital for women and children in Sohar at a cost exceeding 15 million Omani riyals. Good evening once again, and thank you for joining us. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail. His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq issues 2 royal decrees. Royal Decree number 120/2020 on amending some provisions of the Penal Procedures Law. Article 1 replaces the second text of Article number 221 from Penal Procedures Law with criminal court shall not issue execution verdict except with unanimous opinion, and before issuing the judgment, the papers must be sent to a committee formed by orders of His Majesty the Sultan, chaired by Grand Mufti of the Sultanate or his assistant, and with the membership of 2 experts nominated by the committee chairman to express an opinion from the Sharia point of view. And if their opinion did not reach the court within 60 days following the submissions of papers, the court shall issue a verdict of the lawsuit. If the opinion is not unanimous, life imprisonment shall replace the execution penalty. Article 2, this decree shall be published in the official gazette and come into effect from the following day of its issue. Royal Decree number 121/2020 on issuing value-added tax law. Article 1 enacts the attached value-added tax law. Article 2, the chairman of the tax authority shall issue the implementing regulation of the attached law within a period not to exceed 6 months from the date of its enactment. He shall also issue the needed decisions to implement the law provisions. Article 3 cancels all that contradict with the attached law or contravenes with its provisions. Article 4, this decree shall be published in the official gazette and come into effect after 180 days from the date of its issue. The value-added tax law that was released today according to a royal decree that set its date of application to be 180 days from its release date in order for the Sultanate to join other countries that will implement it. Here is a report on that.
The Royal Decree number 121/2020 for the value-added tax set its date of first enforcement to be 180 days, i.e. 6 months after its release date, or April of 2021. The value-added tax is a tax on consumption that is enforced with varying degrees globally. It starts at 5% and could reach up to 27%, and has been implemented by more than 165 countries around the world, including some Arab and Gulf states. The value-added tax that will be implemented in the Sultanate is the lowest at 5%. To explain how the value-added tax that will be implemented in the Sultanate is calculated, let us imagine that I have bought commodities worth 5 riyals. The tax would then be 5 riyals multiplied by 5%, and the final value would then become 5 riyals and 250 paisa. The value-added tax would largely not lead to an increased cost of living. If we look at the tax rates that would be implemented in the Sultanate, its effect would be marginal compared to the tax rates implemented globally. The tax does not include all commodities, as there are 16 commodities and services excluded from it, including basic food commodities, medicine and medical tools, medical care services, education services, local passenger transport services, residential rentals, undeveloped land, the reselling of residential real estate, commodities required by charities, and the needs of those with disabilities. The tax is implemented under strict rules and regulations that clearly define how much the consumer will pay for each commodity, to prevent the tax from being used to unjustly inflate prices. Consumers will also be provided all the necessary information that will be of help when choosing a commodity or service, as the tax value would be included in the receipts of the institution according to the regulations. The value-added tax is vital for the Sultan's economy, as the global economy stands on intertwined values and definitions, and for a country to be able to advance and develop its economy, it is required for it to find competitive features that would allow it to raise its credit rating, as well as for it to diversify its sources of income to guarantee the continuation of the provision of its services and to raise their quality. The value-added tax would provide many benefits for the Sultanate. It would be an additional source of income that would guarantee the continuation of the quality of its public services. It would support the realization of the Sultan's goals in lowering its dependence on the oil sector, considering it's a main source of its revenues. The tax would also have a positive impact on economic and social development and on the Sultanate's global competitive ability. It would contribute in bettering the quality of public services and the continued development of the infrastructure in the future. Finally, those whom the tax applies on should register with the tax authority and to implement effective accounting systems while keeping accurate records of the accounts. It is also suggested to gradually register the businesses that the tax applies on several stages. For the first stage, businesses with high income would be registered and then move on to lower incomes, with the aim of giving a bigger chance for small and medium businesses to figure out the workings of the tax. And until the date of its first implementation, it is required by all businesses and companies to fully prepare in dealing with it and to ensure its collection according to public rules and conditions.
The initial gas production operation started at Ghazir field, which is considered one of the strategic projects in the Sultanate. More details in the following report.
Ghazir gas field has begun production today, about 4 months ahead of schedule and 33 months after the development was approved. The project was implemented by PP in partnership with OQ, Petronas and the Ministry of Energy and Minerals. The total production capacity from Block 61, comprising both Khazan and Ghazir, is expected to rise to 1.5 billion cubic feet of gas a day and more than 65,000 barrels a day of associated condensate, with an estimated 10.5 trillion cubic feet of recoverable gas resources. The block has the capacity to deliver approximately 35% of Oman's total gas demand. During the development of Ghazir, BP has worked closely with local vendors to develop their capabilities and help them to be competitive both in Oman and globally. It is worth mentioning that Ghazir gas field is expected to contribute towards Oman's 2040 vision in terms of providing additional energy to the local industries as well as diversifying the economy. For the Sultanate of Oman Television, Saleh bin Khalfan al-Rahbi.
Now, to have more details about the project, we have with us in the studio here is Andrew Khan, Vice President for Ghazir project. Andrew, welcome to the studio here. And first of all, we would like to congratulate you for this work. Well done for all that. But now, can you tell us, how does this achievement link to Vision 2040?
Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk about the project. And if I may, just at the outset, thank the Ministry of Energy and Minerals and also OQ and our partners, because without their support, everything that is a success for the project wouldn't have been achieved. I think the project aligns in several ways with the 2040 vision for Oman. So Ghazir is the second phase of the development of Block 61 in Oman. The first phase was Khazan. Khazan produces a billion cubic feet of gas and significant condensate as well. With the addition of Ghazir, we're adding another 500 million cubic feet of gas supply and also another 35,000 barrels of condensate. So it increased significantly the supply of lean energy into the Sultanate for decades to come. And I think in terms of another pillar of the 2040 vision about reducing emissions, one of the actions we've taken, it's quite normal industry practice across the world to, when we start up wells, to flare the gas for the initial couple of weeks. We took a decision back in January 2019 to change that and adopt something that we call green completions. And this means that we've eliminated significant volumes of CO2 emissions since that time. It's the equivalent to taking 40,000 vehicles off the road. So in terms of the Sultanate's objectives through 2040 vision of reducing emissions, the project honours this as well, I think.
So it's very much in line with the 2040 vision, which is wonderful, and also it's a healthy a way of actually of doing such things like
Absolutely.
that. But now, if you can tell us what technology was used actually to bring this what you call way ahead of time.
So the schedule piece is important. If you benchmark the schedule of Gazir against the best international comparisons, we're 2 to 4 months ahead of schedule. So that's a significant achievement. I think the major lever for that was that we sought support from the then Ministry of Oil and Gas in 2017 for a philosophy of copying, of cloning, as we say, an exact replica of the Kazan facility. They supported that strategy, and what that allowed us to do was to move ahead very early with procurement of equipment. We also focused on looking again at how many equipment and materials and services we could get within Oman, because that reduced our supply chain and lessened the risk. When this came together, what it meant was that the construction sequence, we looked at the lessons from Kazan, we looked at what we could learn, and that allowed us, with the early delivery of equipment, to optimize the construction schedule as much as possible. So that was the key lever that allowed us to deliver this ahead of time.
Wonderful. Now, what the added values of this project in terms of career and country development?
So I think there's two parts to this. Firstly, if we look at the expenditure for the Gazir development, 85% of the expenditure has gone to companies registered in Oman. Okay, so there's the vast majority of the expenditures there. Within that, there were some significant challenging targets that the ministry placed on us for Omanization. We've achieved those. And if you look at people development, within BP Oman, we're at 80% Omanization at the moment, and all of our contractors were obliged and actually fully committed to hiring significant numbers of graduates as well as Omanis through the rest of the supply chain. So in terms of organisation capability, I think that we've tried to honour that. There's always more we can do, but I think that's broadly tried to achieve the ministry's targets.
Well, that's well done kind of work, and with the speedy way of doing it. We really appreciate that for you coming all the way to come and talk to us. That was, of course, Andrew Corrigan, Vice President of Gazir Projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. The state's general revenues declined by 12.4% by the end of June 2020 compared to the same period last year, to record around 4.8 million Omani Riyals, according to the initial statistics issued by the National Statistics and Information Center. In spending, the current expenses by the end of June recorded more than 4 billion Omani Riyals, with a decline of 0.06% compared to the end of June last year. The statistics pointed out that the general budget of the Sultanate recorded a deficit by 826.5 million by the end of this June, before calculating financial means, as it reached around 20 million Omani Riyals after calculating financial means. Welcome back to the news. His Excellency Dr. Ahmed bin Mohammed Al Saidi, Minister of Health, stated that the Sultanate took all the precautionary measures to limit the spread of coronavirus. He added that the Sultanate works on comprehensive national policy, which takes into consideration the importance of collective action between various state establishments that came during the meetings of the Regional Committee for World Health Organization for Middle East in its 67th round through a video conference. During the meeting, they discussed health coverage and means of combating the COVID-19 pandemic. The meeting also reviewed reports related to polio eradication, as well as expanding the scope of family medicine and strengthening health laboratory services. The Minister of Health announced that the total number of recorded infections with coronavirus in the Sultanate reached 106,575. The number of deaths stood at 1,046 cases, and the total number of those recovered reached 93,222 people, with a cure rate reaching 87.4%. The number of those in intensive care unit reached 213. Financing agreements are signed to establish Sohar Women and Children Hospitals with a cost exceeding 15 million Omani riyals. The signing ceremony was presided over by His Excellency Dr. Ahmed bin Mohammed Al Saidi, Minister of Health. More details in the following report.
With investment and financing from the public and private sectors, Oman Investment Corporation marked the signing of financing agreements and to commence the construction in Oman's first hospital for women and children, with a cost exceeding 15 million Omani riyals.
This is a unique project in the healthcare, and what I'm trying to say that investment in healthcare is definitely worthwhile. The Ministry of Health and the government of Oman encourage the partnership with the private sector. We already outsource a lot of our services to the private sector, and we will definitely outsource the clinical services if and when hospitals with good quality in healthcare are available in Oman. Instead of patients going abroad, we would prefer to see them all treated in Oman.
With a capacity of 60 beds, Sohar Women and Children Hospital is the first project by Aman Healthcare Services. This hospital is expected to start operation in 2022. The investors also intend to build another hospital for women and children in Muscat with a capacity of 70 beds.
I'm glad that today we have signed the construction contract as well as the financial clause for the first women and children hospital in Sohar. This is a specialized tertiary care level hospitals offering tertiary care for women and children, both in the OBS and gyno as well as pediatrician services. And this is the first private sector hospital which offers NICU services.
These hospitals will focus on providing high-quality medical services to women and children with a family-friendly environment, a modern hotel-like infrastructure, and a highly qualified and experienced international medical staff. For the Sultanate of Oman Television, Saleh bin Khalfan al-Rahbi.
As an initiative of the Sultanate's Embassy in Brunei Dar es Salaam, Al Muhallab bin Abi Sufra Pavilion for Omani Publications was launched at Brunei Defense Academy Library. The pavilion includes over 100 books on the contributions of the Omani scholars, thinkers and researchers in reaching intellectual and scientific outcomes. His Excellency Sheikh Ahmed bin Hashil Al Miskari, Sultanate's ambassador accredited to Brunei Dar es Salaam, stated that establishing the pavilion came within the framework of the strengthening friendship and cooperation relations between the Sultanate and Brunei Dar es Salaam in the field of cultural cooperation and other related fields. This is the Sultanate of Oman Television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq issues 2 royal decrees. Ghazir gas field begins production around 4 months ahead of schedule. The state's general financial revenues declined by 12.4% and the public spending also declines by 8.4%. And financing agreements are signed to establish a hospital for women and children in Sohar at a cost exceeding 15 million Omani riyals. And with that, we do conclude this news bulletin brought to you live from this news center of the Sultanate of Oman Television. Once again, thank you for joining us. Wish you a pleasant evening and good night. Stay home and be safe. Let's continue to follow the lockdown and precautionary measure. Good night.